Medieval monks ran thriving apiaries for 9 centuries without a single purchase from a supplier, a single chemical treatment, or a single piece of equipment that required a manufacturer. The methods they used still work today, and the beekeeping industry has spent decades making sure you never heard about them. Here's the full story. Before commercial beekeeping existed, before Langstroth patented his hive, before Varroa arrived on American shores, before the feed store aisle filled up with treatments and supplements and replacement queens shipped in styrofoam boxes, somebody was keeping bees at scale and doing it extraordinarily well. Benedictine monasteries across Europe maintained apiaries continuously from roughly the 9th century through the 18th. Not as a hobby, as a critical economic engine. Beeswax was the only acceptable material for altar candles across the Catholic Church, which meant demand was constant, guaranteed, and paid well. Honey was the primary sweetener and the base of mead, the monastery's most valuable trade product. These were not casual beekeepers. They were running production operations that survived wars, famines, plagues, and centuries of European winters without a single product from a supplier, because no supplier existed. What they built was a management system based entirely on understanding the colony's biology and working with it. No treatments because there were no treatments. No replacement queens because there was no queen market. No sugar syrup because refined sugar was a luxury they could not afford. And yet the hives thrived, the honey flowed, and the knowledge passed from monk to monk for 9 unbroken centuries. That knowledge did not stop working when the commercial industry appeared. It stopped being taught. Here is what that system actually looked like and why it produced results that most modern beekeepers cannot match. The monastery apiary was built around one foundational principle that the commercial model has never adopted. The colony knows more about its own management than you do. Every intervention in the modern playbook, queen replacement, synthetic mite treatment, sugar feeding, foundation installation, exists because commercial beekeeping decided to override the colony's biology at every step in the name of predictability and scale. The monks did the opposite. They created conditions for the colony to manage itself and then harvested the surplus. The first pillar was skep management. The traditional woven straw skep hive is dismissed by modern beekeepers because it does not have removable frames and therefore cannot be inspected the way a Langstroth can. What this dismissal misses entirely is what the skep does correctly. It provides a cavity that matches the natural nest volume of a wild colony almost exactly. It breathes, it insulates, it creates the slightly rough interior surface that bees prefer for propolis application. The colony in a well-made skep is not fighting its housing, it is working with it. The second pillar was swarm management by harvest. Monks did not try to prevent swarming, they planned for it, caught the swarms, and used them to expand the apiary for free. Every swarm is a naturally selected queen at the head of a motivated, healthy, primed-to-build colony. The commercial world treats swarming as a production loss. The monastery model treated it as free stock acquisition and the most powerful selection tool available. The colonies that hit swarm pressure most reliably were the strongest producers, and their swarms became next season's most productive hives. The third pillar was location and forage design. Monastery apiaries were never placed randomly. They sat at the intersection of orchards, herb gardens, linden alleys, and wildflower meadows that the monks maintained for multiple purposes simultaneously. The forage was not an afterthought. It was infrastructure. Every flowering plant in the monastery garden was selected partly for its value to the bees, which in turn increased its yield through pollination. The system fed itself in both directions. The fourth pillar was minimal intervention. Monks checked their hives twice a year, before winter to ensure adequate stores, after winter to assess survival. They did not inspect weekly. They did not open hives out of curiosity. They understood something the modern hobby market has completely obscured. Every time you open a hive, you cost it something: heat, pheromone balance, guard bee response, propolis seals. The colony spends energy recovering from every inspection. Fewer inspections meant more energy directed toward honey production, and the monks knew it without a study to confirm it. The fifth pillar is the one the modern industry finds most threatening: natural mite management through brood biology and local selection. Varroa destructor arrived in North America in the late 1980s, and the commercial response was immediate and chemical. Synthetic miticides, oxalic acid, formic acid, essential oil treatments. The treatment industry built itself around one premise, that bees cannot survive Varroa without pharmaceutical intervention. That premise has generated billions in product sales, and it is not entirely wrong for commercial stock. Commercial bees, bred for production in the absence of selection pressure, have almost no natural Varroa resistance. They were selected to produce honey, not to survive parasites. Treat or lose the colony. That is the commercial reality. But it was not always the reality. And it is not the only reality. Bees that were never rescued from Varroa pressure by chemical intervention developed resistance. Gotland Island in Sweden, the Arnott Forest in New York, multiple isolated populations across Russia and Eastern Europe. These colonies, left without treatment, crashed for several years and then recovered through brutal natural selection. The survivors carried behavioral traits, hygienic behavior, mite-biting behavior, brood development timing that disrupts the Varroa reproductive cycle, that were present in low frequency in the general population and became dominant through selection pressure. The monks never faced Varroa, but they practiced exactly the selection mechanism that produces resistance. They kept bees that survived. Every year, they propagated from the colonies that wintered the best, produced the most, and swarmed the strongest. They culled weak hives without sentiment. They did not rescue failing colonies with treatments that allowed non-resistant genetics to persist and reproduce. The result across centuries was a locally adapted population that was genuinely hardy because it had been selected for hardiness by people who had no alternative. Let me tell you the moment this clicked for me completely. I had been treating my bees twice a year for 3 years. Oxalic acid in autumn, formic acid in summer. My mite counts were manageable, but never low. I was spending $80 to $100 a year on treatments alone, plus time and equipment. One of my hives, a slightly aggressive colony I had been thinking about requeening for 2 seasons, consistently had the lowest mite counts in my yard by a significant margin in every wash I ran. I mentioned this to an older beekeeper at a local club meeting, and he nodded like I had said something obvious. He said, "That hive is telling you something. Stop trying to fix it and start trying to copy it." I made 4 splits from that colony the following spring, instead of requeening it. I stopped treating those splits and let them manage their own mite loads. 2 years later, those daughter colonies have the lowest Varroa counts in my yard. I have not treated them once. The colony I was going to replace because of temperament turned out to be the foundation of the most resistant genetics I own. I almost destroyed it because a book told me aggressive bees should be requeened. The monks would not have made that mistake. They selected for performance and survival, not for the temperament that made management convenient. Here are the mistakes that prevent most modern beekeepers from ever accessing what the monastery system understood. Mistake 1. Confusing management with control. Modern beekeeping education teaches you to control the hive, the colony's biology, its swarming, its queen selection, its brood cycle, is treated as something to be overridden. The monastery model treats the colony's biology as the management tool. The beekeeper's job is to create conditions and harvest surplus, not to replace every natural process with a purchased alternative. Mistake 2. Treating every colony regardless of its actual mite load. Blanket treatment schedules are convenient and they make chemical companies wealthy. They also prevent any selection pressure from building natural resistance in your local population. Run alcohol washes. Know your actual counts. Treat when the data says treat, not because the calendar says September. Mistake 3. Replacing queens on a schedule instead of a performance basis. The 18-month queen replacement recommendation exists because commercial operations running thousands of hives cannot track individual queen performance. You can. A queen that is producing a healthy, productive, low mite colony does not need replacing because 18 months have passed. A queen that is underperforming does. Use your own data, not a calendar written for operations you will never run. Mistake 4. Inspecting too frequently. Weekly inspections are a beginner habit that becomes harder to break the longer it goes unchallenged. The colony pays a cost for every inspection. Modern research confirms what the monks practiced intuitively. Reduced inspection frequency correlates with better colony health outcomes in non-commercial settings. Check when you have a reason to check, not because it has been 7 days. Mistake 5. Buying genetics instead of developing them. Every queen you purchase from outside your local climate and forage base is genetics adapted to somewhere else. The monastery apiary ran on local genetics, selected over generations for local conditions. That is not sentimentality. That is the mechanism that produces genuine hardiness. Picture your apiary running on these principles 3 seasons out. You have not purchased a treatment in 2 years because your locally selected colonies are managing their own mite loads. You have not purchased a queen in 3 years because you are raising them from your strongest performers. You caught 2 swarms last spring, both from your best producers, and they are now your most productive hives. Your inspection schedule is 6 times a year instead of 26. Your input costs are near zero. Your colonies are not just surviving, they are genuinely thriving in a way that chemically dependent commercial stock never does. You are not running a monastery, but you are running the same logic the monks ran, because it is the only logic that produces bees which are truly self-sufficient, truly local, and truly yours. The commercial industry replaced that logic with a product for every problem because products generate revenue and self-sufficient beekeepers do not. The monks had no choice but to figure out the real system. Now you have seen it. Drop a comment right now and tell me which of these 5 pillars you are implementing first. I read every single one. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the next video covers exactly how to start selecting for Varroa resistance in your own yard this season. Without treatment, without purchased genetics, and without losing colonies you cannot afford to lose. 900 years of results. 0 products required. Now you know how they did it.